I'm going to talk to you for a little bit, and then we're going to have a select number of students come up and give very brief presentations about the work that they've done so that you can hear more about what your fellow students are doing and some of what your colleagues are doing. But before we get to that, I wanted to talk to you just a little bit about research as an undergraduate and what I feel it contributes to young people as they do it. The title of my talk is Brevity is the Soul of Wit, Wisdom in the Research Poster. Of course, before I can actually get to that, there are a few people that we need to recognize for making this event happen. Ann Hitt, Robbie Stewart, and Beth Dawson from Oakland University consistently play a large role in keeping Meeting in the Minds what it is and well attended. Andrew Lewis does the same thing, helped tremendously out of Flint, coordinated a lot with the staff here to get students here from Flint to help us organize and select presentations. Then our two associate deans here in Castle, Gabriella and Mike LaChance, really helped in terms of the organization of the event, and Gabriella particularly helped with promotion of the event. Nada Bachir and Nicole Lennon were support staff with whom we could not have done something like this without. When you're presenting your research, it's important to present it as a story, and there are at least three heroes in the story of this Meeting of the Minds coming together. And the first is Zoe Irvin, who helped me keep everyone on the same page. It followed up with people. If you know, those of you who know me know I am bad with details. Zoe is very good with details. And so I'm very thankful to her. Julie Lambert is here. Julie is responsible for putting together the pop-up event, helping to curate it, engaging both the students and faculty at the university to bring that together. I also highly encourage you to check out her website where she has a lot of her own art. There are several students who contributed art to the pop-up today. Some of them, Amal, Zanib, Laura, Nick, Allegra, and Lindsay. If you haven't already, make sure you go and check out their work. It is phenomenal. And then finally, Mike LaChance said this morning, but I'm going to say it again. I'm not even sure that she's in the room. But please, can I get a round of applause for Susan Getter? I was trying to list the number of things that Sue did, and I just stopped and found a picture. Sue did everything when it comes to making this happen. All right, finally, the final group of people I want to thank is the faculty. Faculty, you do a lot for the students that are here. Most of the time, we're in a role like I'm in right now, where you're sort of like, and the students are kind of paying attention. But today, your role was different. You were here to support, you were here to celebrate in one of the most important things that you did today. I'm not saying it's the most important part of your job, but one of the most important things that you did today was you were an audience for students to give them a sounding board, to hear what it sounded like for them to present their work, to ask them questions, to be interested in what they're doing. And that brings me to my brief talk entitled Brevity is the Soul of Wit, Wisdom in the Research Poster. First, I have to begin by telling you I study personality, and a basic dimension in personality that many of you are familiar with is extroversion and introversion. You all know extroverts. These are the people, they like parties, they like attention, they're doing a million things, and they're happy to be doing a million things. And then there are those of us, like myself, who are more not that way. We are introverted. We are happy on our own. Too much time around people and we get tired. I will sleep for hours when today is done. We like reading. What you may not know is that there are differences in how extroverts and introverts talk. Extroverts, as Brian Little informs us, prefer black and white, concrete, simple, to-the-point language, efficient. Introverts prefer contextually complex, contingent, weasel sentences, more or less. So I went to that rich source of information, dictionary.com, and looked up what brevity means. And brevity was defined as the quality of expressing much in few words. As you think about the work that you're doing and presenting, as you think about your posters, and as you go through your life in various positions, be they research or otherwise, communicating clearly and concisely is an important part of what you're going to have to do. In other words, all of us to some extent need to learn how to speak in extraversese. When I told my lab students that this is what I was going to be talking about, brevity, this is how they looked at me. Stone-faced, and they nodded, because they're not dumb. They didn't want to offend me, but I could see underneath that expression that this was what was going on inside. Seifert is going to talk about brevity? No chance. In their defense, they had a reason for believing this. Rather than call out any of my present students, I will refer to a past one, Danielle Funke, who presented at Meeting of the Minds in 2014. I give my students a very detailed set of instructions on how to do their poster. This is what Danielle's poster looked like. Does that look like brevity? It does not. Danielle worked very hard on this poster, wrote a lot, did a lot of research on it. And then I killed Santa Claus. I told her, great, well done. No one will read that. This is not Danielle, but captures the emotional expression that Danielle gave me, which quickly turned to this: why did you make me write all that? If no one is going to read it, what was the point? And I told her, the point is so you can explain it. That text is not there for others. That text is there for you. When you do posters, a lot of times it's like having all your PowerPoint slides up at once. It sort of helps you walk through. And what Danielle quickly saw is that, yes, being organized so that you can speak concisely, even if your slide is not so concise, is important. She turned out okay. She's at Marymount for graduate school, going to work for the FBI, which I tried to talk her into clinical psychology. She's like, no, I'm doing FBI. All right. Brevity, to be brief in and of itself, is not a virtue. The latter part of the phrase is the soul of wit. Soul, defined as the principle of life, feeling, thought, and actions in humans, regarded as distinct, separate from the body, the spiritual part. As you think about your work, it's important to keep the soul of your work in it. And that soul often is the story behind what you did. Wit, the keen perception and cleverly apt expression of those connections between ideas that awaken amusement, pleasure, and interest. As you are being brief, do not lose the benefits of introversion. Introverts are phenomenal at detecting nuanced connections, at finding what is deeply important and meaningful about the work they do, and translating that, and expressing it to others. As you are being brief, you must not just be brief, you must continue to also keep the soul of your story and the nuance within that story. In short, when telling your story, you have to create your own holy trilogy. Holy trilogy, not Trinity, meaning I'm referring to Star Wars. As you explain your work, it's important to give people a background, both about the work and about yourself. How did you get interested in this? What does the listener need to know to understand the hypothesis? As you transition to the middle part of your story, you need to explain what you did and why you did it that way. Finally, what you learned, and ultimately what matters is what might it mean? In science, just like Star Wars, now that Disney has it, it's never over. The last part of your story and the last part of your work is going to be The Force Awakens. In short, what are you going to do now? What happens next? Remember, keep your soul and wits about you. You may hear in the public a narrative that science is under attack. I don't know if that's true or untrue, but what I do know is that science is getting stronger. Brevity doesn't just mean shallowness, nor does it mean dealing with short attention spans. Instead, thinking about what's interesting, creating a story or a narrative, and keeping it brief is about thinking about your audience, about thinking about your listener. Ask your professors. Many of them have gotten reviews on papers that say, you need to add X, Y, and Z, and also, it's too long. It takes creativity to find a way to tell your story, but to do it briefly. How long is 3 minutes? I learned that at an event hosted by the Dean of Castle, Martin Hirschak. he did something called Research Slam. And in it, 12 faculty members each talked for 3 minutes. Some of you, I know, that just sounds immediately impossible. 12 faculty members talked for only 3 minutes. I was highly skeptical. One, I was skeptical the faculty could do that, frankly. And two, I was skeptical you could learn anything in 3 minutes. However, what I found out in doing this myself is it forced me to distill down my work to what is absolutely essential. And what I learned was hearing what was absolutely essential in other people's work taught me something. I learned something. When you think about your research posters and presentations, try to remember these 3 things. Keep it relatively brief. Where is your story? What is the beginning, the middle, and the end? Keep the soul in your work. And finally, appreciate wit. Doing something creatively, doing something with humor, doing something that makes it interesting is not bad science. It's persuasive. It makes science stronger. It's a good example. This is Dr. Arlo Clark-Foos's poster. Some of you maybe saw today. Very visual, bright, draws you in, and allows the student to quickly tell, here's what I did, why, and why it's interesting. Finally, remember, part of why you're learning to do this is an important skill in life. Some of you are going to go on to become researchers. Many of you will not, and that is fine. This is something that will help you regardless of your career. The ability to speak clearly in an interesting manner is always useful. With that said, seeing is believing. So what we're going to do now is we're actually going to have a mini research slam in which 5 students are going to each get to talk for slightly longer than 3 minutes.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Paris Freeman, and I am a senior, no pun intended. And this is my senior year. I am a sociology major and a psychology minor, and I'm going to talk about my experiences doing research. I currently work for 3 professors, Paul Drauss, sociology, Juliette Rowdy, who does public health and economics, and also psychology professor Brenda Whitehead. A little bit about me, background. So I started, of course, college later than the majority of you, and decided to go back to college. And one of the classes that really had a great impression on me was urban sociology. I've lived in the city of Detroit for all of my life, and I have had the advantage of knowing when the city of Detroit and neighborhoods looked really, really good. We had tree-lined streets, we lived in middle-class neighborhoods, and we just had great community and cohesiveness. Something happened in the transition throughout the decades, and I didn't know what that was. I went through high school, I lived over in Canada for 5 years, and when I came back, all hell had broke loose in the city of Detroit. And I didn't know how to put words to it. Urban sociology gave me the words to put to what was going on with the city. It helped me to understand the transitions. It helped me to understand how government and disenfranchisement and depopulation and all of those really negative words affected my neighborhood. It taught me about place and space, pamphlet, and what that meant. And so I was able to make sense of it, and from there, I fell in love with doing ethnography, which is field work. So let me go back. In 2015, I was introduced to the opportunity to become a research assistant and under Professor Paul Drauss, and from there, we started to do dendro remediation. This is a program that was introduced to Dr. Drauss. The city of Detroit was looking at different contamination sites in the city of Detroit. You know that we are an industrial city. A lot of people moved out at different points in the 70s and 80s. They left their businesses, and underneath their businesses was nothing but contaminated land. This is land that they put schools on, that they put businesses on, that people in urban neighborhoods were walking on daily basis, and they were just addressing the issue. However, even though they had a great initiative, they forgot one thing. They forgot to tell the people what they were doing. And so there was a great uproar in the neighborhoods because people were coming in hazmat suits and doing all kind of things in the neighborhood, you know, with good intentions, but you really do need to talk to the people who live there, let them know, right? So that was how we came into that program, and I worked in Southwest Detroit, and I learned surveying, methodology, focus groups, and how to engage the neighborhood. In 2016, I continued working, but now I worked with Professor Rowdy, and I worked at putting together a restorative justice program with her. My background is in addiction studies, and that's what I hope to do when I go to graduate school, is to continue working there. I am a certified addiction counselor now, and so this just helped me to give more of a dynamic to the clients that I was working with. I presented at the sociological conference, and the change, we started with it being called, the presentation being called Greening in the Grassroots. After being into and doing the research, I actually changed the title to the importance of engagement regarding greening initiatives in Detroit neighborhoods, and it gave a little bit more of a focus as to what I was doing as far as that research is concerned. I was at the Meeting of the Minds in 2016. Dr. Drouse, Dr. Rowdy, and my professors helped me to write my paper on that, and it was included in the Meeting of Minds, and it was published in the journal as a journal article in 2016. In 2017, I continued working with Professor Rowdy, and as a principal investigator, because my background is in addiction, I was able to get a job and with the Institute of Social Research as a field interviewer, and we went into Detroit neighborhoods and began to interview using survey methodology, IV drug users, and the increase in the influx. And what it was the initial phase of this project research, and so they were looking at the different dynamics, the different things that were going on with IV drug users and the influx of new Detroiters and how that affected the drug population. So I presented a video and presentation also with the Greening of Detroit, and did a video with my classmates, and most of all of that I've been doing includes working with my classmates. I don't just do this by myself. You know, you begin to work with different classmates, and you all come together to do these different projects. And so this is just a whole lot of stuff. I'm trying to wrap it up. All right. So this is my senior year, like I said. I'm still working on the dendro remediation program, but the focus has changed. I'm a go-getter. I see things, and that's part of what research is about, is that it always is changing. The more information that you get, the more that your focus is changing. So one of the things that I looked at, and one of that Professor Seifert said is having a heart for what you're doing, and community is really, really important to me. So what I did is, the greening infrastructure was still going on, but I specifically began to work with a community. This community is the District 3 community in Detroit. It's the largest community in Detroit, and it is the poorest. If you want to see blight and depopulation, drug use, and all of that, it is there. However, there are people there in that community that will blow your mind. They want change. They just don't know how to do it. And so I'm going in and I'm going to help them to just put a step forward so that they can begin to make those changes. I'm grateful to the school, and I'm grateful for the many collaborations that I've been able to have and partnerships. I just was awarded a grant in order to get that done. And so this summer, I'll be working with that community, doing research, and also in getting numbers and data to increase their likelihood in the future for funding and investment. This is some of the pictures of some of the things that I've done. And right here, oh, you know, I'm pointing. But in the corner there, you'll see a garden. We actually did, that was our project in one of the urban sociology classes that, with Dr. Draus, is that we actually planted a garden for a agency in Detroit. I just want to give some acknowledgments. Professor Draus of sociology, Professor Juliet Rowdy, Professor Brenda Whitehead, psychology, Professor Seifert, psychology, the Office of Metropolitan Impact, Professor Carmel Price, who has always been my rooter, and the Meeting of Minds organization. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. I'm Jacob Yash Brockstein, and I work in the Urban Practice Workshop on campus as a student research assistant. I first got involved working with the Urban Practice Workshop back in early 2016 when I saw an advertisement for an independent study that would look at social movements in Detroit focused around housing issues such as speculation and eviction, and focusing on how data can be used to empower those social movements. So for that class, I read a book, we attended a lot of group meetings, and then I also went over tons of data, dozens and dozens of data sets from the city, from Data-Driven Detroit, and other sources. And I organized that all into an Access database that I later, using Excel as an intermediary, mapped the data from that. One of the maps I ended up making is sort of a conglomerate of information, was for the O'Hare Park Community Association. And they wanted a map of speculator-owned homes, or people who own a lot of homes and rent them out, and homes that were subject to tax foreclosure that year, so that they could knock on doors and invite people to community meeting on that Tuesday, next Tuesday. And so I made this map for them. It took me quite a while, and I went with them on that door knocking campaign because I wanted to experience, what was my map doing. So I went with them I think there's like 16 of us, and we knocked on 187 doors in one day. And that following meeting, there was over 50 people that showed up. And there was free legal advice at the clinic and just general know your rights information. So now, 2 years later, we have a much more complicated system, as you can see, with a lot more programs. But it makes the work actually a lot faster. I mean, I use Excel, I use Python, I use Postgres SQL Server, I use PostGIS, I use ArcPro, QGIS, and Carto to display our information. And through this network, I can do what I used to do in like several hours or even several days in minutes. This is a map I just made last week for Concerned Citizens of Brightmoor. And they use the map to help educate people in their area about the housing conditions around them. So, I do a lot of other things too in the lab. I help with research. I organize data sets, I clean data sets, and I help generate new data sets. But still, my favorite thing to do is make maps for community groups. And that's because I truly believe what makes a good map is not how pretty it is, it's about how useful it is to people. And a good map shows the people behind the data, it shows the lives behind the data, and it also it shines a light in a darkness. And when people can see what's going on in their neighborhoods, things become visible, and when things are visible, they can be changed. So I truly, truly believe that by making these maps, I'm helping make a change. So, thank you.
Hi, everyone. My name is Jamil Joma. First and foremost, I'd like to thank the organizers for setting this up and inviting me here to speak today. Like Dr. Seifert mentioned, my talk today is going to be called A Morphometric Analysis of Microophthalmia on Chicken Craniofacial Skeleton. And so just to provide a brief background, the term microophthalmia very literally translates to small eye. And so we see this condition in humans in which they have a small eye on one side and their skull has, they have extreme deformations in the skull. And so to test this, we use the chicken model. And so there are two distinct classes of reptiles and mammals. And there's a key difference here that we reason to use chickens as our example. And so as you can see in these two early stages of a chicken and a mouse embryo, these are CT scans. In the chicken embryo, you see the embryonic eye as being extremely large as when compared to a mammal. And so the reason we wanted to test this is because the eye at such an early stage is so large, and so we want to understand what effects it has on skull structure and formation. And so what we did is at an early stage removed the eye, allowed the animals to develop normally, and then harvested them at a later stage. Oh, well, that's pointing to the eye in case you guys didn't notice. And so after removing the eye, this is after we harvested and went through the whole procedure. And so this is a top view of the chicken skull. And so as you can see on the right-hand side, the right eye has been removed, and so what you see is the top of the skull deviating in that direction, whereas the mandible below remains straight and unaffected. And so while you can see this gross morphological change, we really wanted to understand what bone structures are actually being affected. And so after performing surgeries, harvesting them, going through the procedure, we took photos of the palatal view. So this is looking upward into the mouth. And so we had to remove the mandible, remove the eye so we could have a clear view of bone structures. And so in order to do this, after taking photos, we selected landmarks. And if you can see on this image here, the landmarks were selected to encompass the greatest possible variation we could possibly see when doing the analysis. And so in order to do the analysis, we used this software called MorphoJ, and it's basically a morphometric analysis to allow us to visualize and quantify shape change. And so this is an example of a normal sample. And so what you can see in this transformation grid on the right, which is called a lollipop graph, the lines and circles show directionality and variation within the samples. And as you can see, the thin lateral bones on the right and left side, called the jugal and quadrata jugal, show the most variation in the anterior posterior direction. However, the normal sample remains the same. And so again, these are palatal views, so looking upwards into the mouth. And so in this example, one eye has been removed. And so it would be the chicken's right eye, but we see that on our left side. And again, what we notice here is the lateral bones, the jugal and quadrata jugal, seem to be shifting medially inward, where on the opposite side, they seem to bend and extend outward. Something important to notice here is the difference in length from the tip of the beak to the end of each of these lateral bones. As you can see, the microophthalmic side is clearly shorter than the other side, and we're presuming that the other side remains normal in length. And so if you can see the transformation grid over here for this sample, again, most of the variation is in the lateral regions, but not so much in the anterior-posterior direction. That's mainly on the microophthalmic side, and it seems to be collapsing inward on itself, while the other side is forced to bow outward to facilitate this change and accommodate for the compression of the other side. So basically, in conclusion, the main takeaways is that we know the eye is formed prior to any osteogenesis in the surrounding area, and that it has a substantial effect on skull patterning. Also, ablation of the eye has both a localized effect, as we saw within the jugal and quadrata jugal, as well as an overall effect on skull structure. So we see the deviation in the skull, and it basically affects the entire palate itself. And so just briefly, I'd like to discuss the personal impact research has had on me. As a pre-medical student, going to medical school, most students have to, really make the decision, do they want to do patient care, do they want to do research? There's a fine line between the two. And I think that this has really fortified my plans in going forward and pursuing research as a career. Also, the hands-on work, being able to work with an experienced faculty member, it's just different. When you're taking a course, your experiments run 1 or 2 weeks. When you're doing research in a lab, this goes for 6 or 7 months, and the procedures take a long time. So I think that's a good experience every undergrad should have, and I'm grateful for having that. And then again, I just get to learn something new and exciting every day, and if it wasn't for that, I wouldn't be doing research. So that's all. I'd like to thank you all for being here.
Hello, everyone. My name is Majd Ferej, as Dr. Seifert introduced me. I'm a senior in biological sciences and a minor in psychology at U of M Dearborn. And the first time that I transferred to U of M Dearborn, I wanted to get involved in research as soon as I can. So in one class that I took, which was Bio 130, which is an introductory biology class, I met Dr. Anne Danielson-Francois, who some of you know. Something that she studied was really interesting to me, which was spider sex, which was something that I never thought about, and something that I never really imagined to be interested in, but I wanted to go into it because it's something that I never thought about before. So this is the species that we're working with. It's Tetragnatha elongata species of spiders. This is the male, and there's obviously a female. And what we wanted to do is to study the sexual behavior of these spiders. So we wanted to test how a male spider can know if a female spider is a virgin or or non-virgin. So there is a way for him to distinguish between those, and then he changes the way he interacts with the female. So we wanted to know how that can happen. So we wanted to test the ability of the male to discern the female mating status based on the web that she creates, she weaves. So we went into the Rouge River. This is my friend Caitlin. She's my lab partner. So we went into the Rouge River in May, and it was cold, but we went anyways. We went into the Rouge River, and we had small vials, and we wanted to collect these spiders, which are actually twig mimics. So you cannot really see them very clearly when you're in the water. So we went there, and we collected actually 300 spiders after 5 times we went into the river. And we then took them to our lab, and we divided them into males and females after they molted. And we took really good care of them to the point where I had to come here every single day in my summer time to take care of them and to change the water and to feed them every single one individually. And we fed them using flies. We got flies and we imported them from Carolina, and we took care of the flies themselves, and then we had to actually catch a single fly and then feed every single one of the spiders individually for them to grow and for them not to be angry and to mate when we want them to mate. This is all the materials and methods and not our actual experimentation. So what we did is that we got the spiders in a fish tank, in an empty fish tank, and we divided the females into 2 groups. One group was the virgin females that were not touched by any male, and the other group were the touched females, which is a trick that we played on the male by making him think that the female is actually mated before, but she hasn't. So what happened is that we got a male and a female, and we let them lock jaws, which is something they do before they mate, but we did not let the male to insert any of the pedipalps that he has into the female. So the female is technically still a virgin, but we are tricking him to think that she's not a virgin, because just locking jaws will induce certain chemical changes in the female, and then the female will start secreting certain pheromones, certain chemicals that will let the male know that she's not a virgin, although she still technically is. And I added here a small video. I don't know if it says it cannot play the media, but the male is the kind of tinier one, which is right here. And the female is the one that has the larger abdomen. And this is kind of the position that they take when they're mating. And we filmed all of these matings, which were around 40 matings that we did, with changing the type of web, which was weaved by a virgin or a touched female, and then changing the type of female that is on the web. So we interchanged all of that to kind of see how those changes will affect the ability of the male to discern the female mating status. This is a better picture. This is one of the videos that we took, and we were analyzing all of the videos throughout the fall semester. You can see that this little, this little kind of wedge-shaped thing is the palp, which he inserts into the female. So we had to kind of take a video of all of these, and then we analyzed all of his movements in terms of the scrapes, in terms of the taps that he does on the female and everything like that. And we called them flubs, and then we grouped them into different groups of behaviors, and then we did an analysis of the differences between when the female is a virgin, when the female is a touched virgin, and our control was the female being a totally non-virgin, which is she made it before and then she's mating again. This is a graph of our results that we did. So this is a variation of the hematodoca inflation. The hematodoca is just the sperm reservoir of the male. So as you can see, the virgin and the touched virgin, which is again the fake non-virgin, did not seem to have a very statistically different result. So this shows that the web might not really technically have a difference in terms of how the male can discern the female mating status. And as you can see, the non-virgin is our control, and it's the one that has the stark difference compared to the others. And you might be wondering, why would the hematodocal inflations be less for a non-virgin? It's because of sperm competition and sexual competition. So the male thinks that the female mated with somebody else, and he tries to remove the sperm that is inserted in the female. So that's why he's inflating less, and he's trying to remove the sperm more to ensure his paternity for his future kids, I guess, if you want to call it. And this is another graph that we studied, which is the duration of the inflation as a function of female mating status, history, which is also kind of how long does he inflate. Inflating just means he's technically ejaculating into the female. So the non-virgin also had a less duration of inflation because he's inserting a lot and removing a lot. And the touch virgin and the virgin, as you can see, they're not totally different. However, this is per palp insertion, which is interesting because now we're recalculating and we're just calculating the total number of insertions and the total number of durations. And there seems to be an actually statistically significant difference in terms of the web type. So we have to study that a little bit more to see our future results. And right now we're studying we froze all the males that mated. And now we're just counting the sperm on the outside of the palp and the inside. And I've been working with my lab partner as well, so we're just counting that for our future studies. And this is a picture of my lab team. Dr. Francois is missing from the picture. She was actually the one taking it. But I was very fortunate to be able to work with incredible people that really inspire you to work harder. And it was such a stimulating environment in general. And this is why I really, really liked research. And again, I've heard before that research changes the researcher himself, but I didn't know the extent to which it changes the researcher. It's really an emotional and intellectual experience as a whole that I would not, trade for anything. And I know that other people have introduced their research in the Research Slam. Some did math, some did chicken studies, and some did other studies. And although we studied different things, I feel like the common denominator is the experimental design that we learned, the teamwork that we learned, the ability to juggle different responsibilities. We're all students, we're all probably working, and we're also doing research. And so the transferable skills that we learned can be used in other areas. And this is why I'm very glad to say that as of this summer, I am involved in a new research at the University of Michigan Medical School. And we're studying UTI infections. We're trying to create a vaccine for UTIs, which is a totally different side of spiders. Doesn't have to do anything with that. But again, it's the transferable skills that I learned in this lab that I could apply to different studies. And at the end, I just wanted to say that because I was really impacted with research, I wanted other students to kind of get involved as well. So Dr. Seifert was very helpful with that. And we started a new organization called the Undergraduate Association of Academic Research, where we tend to link students with the researchers on campus and off campus so that everybody can get a chance to get involved in research as well. And yeah, that's everything. Thank you.